take a gap year. I promise you'll thank me later. If you're here, you're probably on the fence about taking a gap year. Maybe it's something that really appeals to you, something that you could see yourself doing with the next year ahead of you. Maybe it's just a far-fetched possibility that crossed your mind once weeks ago and you didn't think about it since. This is your sign to take the gap year. I changed a lot in my gap year. Before it started, I was very normal. I wasn't the most extroverted person, and like most people, I found initiating interactions with other people and taking risks really exhausting and incredibly scary. And after I'd finished my gap year, it was so easy for me to just talk to somebody that I had never met before. It was so easy to decide to do something that other people might laugh at, but that I really wanted to do for myself. I took so many more risks, and they all paid off. Not the least, the risks that I took in taking my gap year in the first place. It made me so much more comfortable in myself, and it really allowed me to come into who I was. But how did that actually happen? On my gap year, I was in places that forced me to meet new people, and it was the perfect training ground for me to just exercise my social muscles. I have to say, I did throw myself into the deep end at first. My job in the autumn of 2024 was actually on a vineyard in France. Given that, I was surrounded by people who, spoke French, given that they lived in France, and almost all of them spoke little or no English. I, very usefully, spoke no French, so that was a match made in heaven. However, I made it work. For the month or two that I worked there on the vineyard, I actually managed to get on really well with the people around me. And that really did wonders for my approach and confidence towards meeting new people. I then worked as a ski instructor in Austria, where I did a similar thing, but for people who spoke German, though the level of English was actually much better there. And then I travelled through South America, where I had to use my somewhat limited Spanish to traverse a continent. In all of these places, I was forced way out of my comfort zone, and I grew way more comfortable with being there. I was meeting new people almost every day. And therefore, it was a muscle that I had exercised so much that it almost became second nature. I took the risk, and it paid off. And now, meeting people is a skill that comes very easily to me. But most importantly, the year allowed me to do a whole bunch of really cool stuff. Whether this was going to après-ski with friends on days off work in the Alps, hiking up to Machu Picchu at the crack of dawn and surrounded by stray dogs, one of which made it to the top with me and my friend, and shooting down sand dunes in Peru on 2 skis. That's why gap years are so cool. Wouldn't you want the freedom just to design what an entire year of your life looked like? Wouldn't that be an amazing blueprint for you to then take further into life? If you can design exactly what your life would look like for a year, what stops you from keeping on designing your life as you would like to have it as you get older, past that year? In a gap year, you can do so many cool things. You can force yourself out of your comfort zone and push yourself as a person much further than you thought was possible. And all of that is possible through the gap year. So take that risk, take the gap year. I promise it's going to pay off for you. Listen, if this video hasn't convinced you yet, then there's another video which I'll link right at the end of this video, which is basically a story of how I got out of a really hairy situation in Paraguay. But it's one of the coolest stories of my life, and it happened on my gap year. Perhaps hearing another cool story might help you to come around to thinking that a gap year really is worth it for you. And if that fails to convince you, I have plenty more stories from my gap year to tell, many of which are really interesting and bizarre, and you just couldn't write them. So feel free to subscribe if you want to hear any more of them. Without further ado, I'll see you next time.